everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. There's 3 of us now. There's going to be 4 of us a little later. Yes, Brother Brian is joining us. This past Sunday, was it Saturday or Sunday? I think Sunday. Was the 10th anniversary of the first Comic Book Bears podcast episode that was released by myself and the first co-host of the show, Justin Allen. We are going to have a 10th anniversary show. It's been very difficult to coordinate getting people together, and we didn't even know if we'd have all 4 of us. You know, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
So, and still, I'll believe it when I see it too. With that, though, we are going to have, a show celebrating 10 years. It's going to be a little more, going to contain a little more pompy. Jesus, I just invented a word. Pomp and circumstance. So be on the lookout for that in the coming months. But did want to mention that, hey, we've been around for 10 years. It's amazing. I was 23 when it started. So.
Interesting.
And we have a lot to talk about. We have certain bits of news. We have, lots of comic books to talk about. The first thing, though, I want to talk about is to offer our congratulations to Mr. Alexander McKenzie. I think you would better express what happened with the latest issue of the National Jurist than I could. So why don't you take it away?
You caught me off guard with this. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So the National Jurist is a publication that is the law school publication across the United States. Essentially, it's one of the bigger ones. It goes out to all the law schools. They all get copies of it. It does it like quarterly. It's
you would put that over ABA Journal?
Well, no, ABA Journal's different.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not diminishing. I'm just saying it like.
Yeah. ABA Journal also is something that like lawyers.
And get ready for your free subscription to Super Lawyer. You can't get rid of it.
But as far as like the law school publications go, it is distinctly for law schools all across the United States. Mm-hmm. Like any ABA law school, they get it. It's just part of the deal. Each year they pick 10 students from, assumedly the 120,000 students that are in law school across the United States. And they spotlight them for their 10 law students of the year. And they selected me for some reason. I don't know how I got on the radar. I genuinely don't. It was very humbling. I'm still processing it. It was a shock. But they did a little write-up for all the 10 law students. And, there were students from Hawaii, students from some bigger name law schools. And I'm the first person from my law school that's ever got selected. And I don't know if anybody from the bigger law school here in the States ever gotten selected. Not that it matters one way or the other. But it was pretty cool. It's a very, very large honor. And it's largely because, I do fairly well in law school, but also because I am balancing law school with running the nonprofits and the work that I do. Which is very humbling. Like that's a very important thing to me in my work. So, it's always nice to get patted on the back, but I'm way better at giving congratulations and receiving them. So, thanks. It's very, it's been very fun figuring all this out and getting people from all across the United States sending me DMs saying great job, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, we are super proud of you, and we hope you make a big mark. And 3 or 4 years from now, hire me as of counsel, and I'll just sit around and do nothing and be cute.
That'll work. We can make that happen.
Hire me to get you coffee because I'm the one out of the 3 here that has not been to law school. But hey, it might be a lot of fun for me to be the coffee boy. But anyway. That really was an awesome honor, and it was really cool seeing that for you. So I'm really,
one thing I have
really
to say. I have to say, I'm not exactly sure what Brian's educational trajectory was, though he was a professor for a time. I think all of us have had postgraduate.
Yeah.
We
should start bragging about that a little bit. Yeah.
We are.
I don't have my degree for postgraduate. I did 3 years of it and have nothing to show for it.
Really?
But, it's all good. Mm-hmm.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And that was McGill.
No, it was UConn and University of Constance.
Okay, so McGill was undergrad.
Yeah, McGill was my undergrad.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
No, McGill was McGill's my alma mater, and Constance and UConn is my secondary, which I of course didn't complete. So.
Well, don't feel bad.
Might as well not mention it.
I have an unfinished MFA.
That
Either
way, we're academic AF. So
yeah.
We've had a couple people join us. David Toby, I posted up for those of you watching. Did have some applause here, as well as James Figueredo has joined us. Good evening, Handsome Bears. Congratulations on your 10th anniversary. And then David, of course, mentions Steve Morey, untainted by law school. Yes, yeah, so far untainted. And James, of course, giving his congratulations as well. So that's pretty awesome. And like we had mentioned, Brian will be joining us shortly. He'll be hopping on with us, so hopefully we can get his comic recommendations and discussion, because it's been a while, I know, since a lot of people have had the Brian Pittard X-Men recap, and I'm really looking forward to it, because I want to know what he's been thinking about the latest turns in the world of the X-Men. So
I did read X-Men this week, just not current X-Men, and I'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah. Oh, hey, we also have Chris Cummins joining us. Congratulations on 10 years. Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, it has been 10 years. Which I wasn't here for all 10 years, so.
No.
This guy, though.
Brian came in, I think he guested once, and then he came on as a regular, I think like 2 or 3 episodes later. And then you came on as a guest, and then it was a bit of a gap.
Mm-hmm.
We kept talking to you, but we just didn't have you on.
Yeah, we were doing the daily chat thing, and
then you came on, and then we were like, we're keeping you.
And I'm a side effect of the pandemic.
I'm a kept boy.
And what were we saying?
I'm a side effect of the pandemic, so
yeah.
We've got a couple more comics. You guys are the best. Thank you again, Chris. You're the best too, and congratulations on the pug. And John Runyon has joined us. Hello, John. Comic Book Bears Assemble. It is always wonderful to see you, John.
I love talking to John about Marvel, because I think I always surprise John with my legacy knowledge of Marvel. But yes, here we go. Got the. We're not a hat trick. It's something else. Hey, Brian.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm fashionably late as all. Well, not always, but yes, I'm fashionably late. I hope I missed. Catch me up. No,
but your presence was unexpected, so we're very happy to have you.
Oh,
very, very, very happy to have you. Do you leave tomorrow for your little weekend?
Oh, that's right. Yes, I was like, where am I going again? So I was supposed to not be in the country right now, but then when that got canceled because of reasons I won't go into, work, boring stuff, I'm going to Portland tomorrow, and I'm very excited to go to Excalibur Comics, which I believe is the shop, though there's many other great shops there. But any other recommendations are appreciated. If our listeners have any great Portland things that I have to do, we're there for one night. So let me know. Yeah.
I have
3 hours. It's not far, relatively. So, I mean, we'll be back, but this will all be our first big, exciting adventure.
I have a little bit of a trip. Tomorrow's my last day for work for like 5 days, I think. And then Monday through Wednesday is my Madcap Manhattan adventure. My best friend since second grade, Stu Scheinman, I'm seeing him for the first time in 3 years in person. And we are going to see both nights of Sparks at Town Hall. So that's pretty cool.
Jealous.
And Stu and I saw Sparks together in 1983 as the opening act for Rick Springfield at the Brendan Byrne Arena over in East Rutherford. And because of certain situations, he has not seen Sparks since 1983. And they are like by far one of his favorite acts. So very excited about that. And that's going to be Monday through the Wednesday. And Caleb just came back from a little excursion to Dallas.
I did, yeah. So
Yeah.
I've been on spring break, and I needed to literally have a break, or I was going to go insane. So we
Yes.
jumped out and went to Dallas for a few days and toured the city, saw all kinds of really cool sights, went to some great places, picked up some really cool stuff. So, and then got home and got the nieces for the rest of spring break. So it's been fun filled and gunkling and all kinds of cool stuff. So,
all right, cool. All right, well, we are 12 minutes in, so we probably should start with the news. So, Steve, why don't you take it over there and tell us about some recent developments in the news world in relation to comic books and associated properties and stuff.
Well, let's start with a fun one, or fun-ish, depending on your perspective. So the CW, as they're wont to do around this time of the year, it just made their announcements on what's been renewed. For those of us who watch the increasingly inaccurately named Arrowverse shows, basically the ones we expected to be renewed, Superman and Lois, which is fantastic. The Flash, which, I mean, it's one of those things. It's the last legacy one. It's the show that is still going. It has been renewed for a 9th season. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten any news about Stargirl yet. I mean, obviously they're getting their season 3, which is going to be starting later this year. And we haven't got any news about DC's Legends of Tomorrow, which just completed its 7th season. But it's possible that that's going to keep going because it's a fun show. It's something that people who do watch it really love it. The ones we haven't heard anything about and are probably less likely. Batwoman, unfortunately, the ratings just haven't been doing well. Naomi, which is the new one that I was really excited to see because, of course, the pedigree of it. I mean, you've got Ava DuVernay on, producing it, and I think directed the pilot. Hasn't really found an audience, unfortunately, even though it's being paired with Superman and Lois, which is the top rated of these shows.
Unfortunately, it's losing on certain nights. It's lost as much as 70% of its lead-in. Which is
just a lot.
Huge. Yeah, huge. Which also surprises me because out of all the shows, that to me seems the most CW-ish in terms of its conception. But I just don't think the numbers are there for either Batwoman or for Naomi to continue. I do think Legends, I think they would, even as, whether it's out of courtesy or, there's various reasons to keep shows going. Case in point, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
It was the international market that kept that show up for years. It never lost its top 10 status in Australia. From what I understand. So,
and Legends has a good audience on Netflix.
But, because we get news that's a little bit filtered differently. But apparently, with S.H.I.E.L.D., there were markets around the world where it would just stayed big, and that justified its continued existence.
Did anyone here finish or watch Legends the last season through the end? I heard that they gave it an ending that sort of would work okay as a series ending.
No, I didn't feel that. They gave certain characters an ending that if that's the last time we see them, sayonara, all hail well met. But in terms of ending the Legend saga, I don't believe they did that. Okay. Yeah, I don't believe they did that. Whereas Batwoman, it's tied up in a bow. Yeah. If it needs to be.
Do you think maybe Naomi just doesn't have the name recognition?
I think that's some of it, but I also think some of it's the show. Yeah. There's some very strong cast members and there's some very exceptionally weak cast members on it. And if you do watch that, I'm sure you'll come away feeling the same way.
Bendis shows can't catch a break, man. What is up with this? It's not Bendis at all, but his shows they seem kind of cursed now.
Well, it could be, like to me on paper, Why the Last Man seemed like, that would be a show that would resonate with a lot of people, and it would, we would get to see the entire arc at the very least. Yeah, and it didn't connect.
They're just issues. I think the production and contractual issues that went with Y: The Last Man, and the fact that it took forever to get off the ground. Naomi just not finding an audience.
Where something like The Boys, that surprised me that that's as big as it is.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Which
think
is
that
coming
would
back. It's got another season starting,
and has an animated spinoff too.
Yeah,
and another spinoff coming. So yeah.
And as David mentions here, they've got 2 more rounds of renewals to go for some of their other shows. So,
We're
it'll probably show up
away from the upfront. So,
yeah.
But there are certain shows that they do need to lock some actors sometimes when they have a slightly bigger name than others.
And
so.
that can take some time.
and
John Ryan
plus, you
here,
also want,
Stargirl
like in
was my
terms of
jam.
actors, you also want to be courteous to them since we are entering pilot season.
Oh yeah.
So, but you're also in a situation now that people can do more than one show. If there's a streaming show that's 10 episodes and a network show that's 13, you really can manage that within the same calendar year.
Or if you're on SNL and you're on the cast, but you don't show up for half of the season because that's cool now, it can happen too.
Or you're filming a show in Vancouver, and another show decides to film in Vancouver, and you can just kind of go walk down the street to the other studio. Yeah,
I need to stalk the Vancouver shows coming up.
Hey Tony,
I'm totally
Tony Gilkinson popped in. Hey guys,
a lot of people saying hi tonight. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, there's other CW shows that we watch, or Riverdale. Riverdale, I believe, has been renewed for other comic shows, and that I watched a random episode. It is
nuts
out there. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening.
It's a good out there.
Yeah.
It's a very good out there. It's like Steve is watching the first arc, which was Rivervale, which was kind of an alternative reality thing
with magic.
And
Sabrina
what we
shows
hear
up.
now is the magic continues, but there's also superpowers. It's really out there.
Why not?
It's out because why not?
Yeah. David here mentions, can we talk about this week's Flash, please? And I haven't watched it, but there is something that Bill here made sure to immediately text me about when it was on, and that's a certain actor making a reappearance after some time.
I don't know if you can see there, but so
Max Adler.
So when the wolf happens, the wolf gets recognized and the wolf gets disseminated. That's the way.
Exactly.
The wolf gets disseminated has got to be the title of this show.
I had to make sure I didn't mishear you there. The wolf gets disseminated, not inseminated.
Yes.
Well,
I was gonna lobby for Pompey, but
Tony Gilkinson here. Max.
I guess David Toby pointed out that this is the same actor that played the closeted bully on Glee. To which I replied to Steve, "Do I look like somebody who watched Glee?"
I mean, some of the episodes
worked
were
in theater professionally. Yeah, so what can you do?
The theater, musical theater.
Glee was the younger theater kids' favorite show for a decade.
Glee just wasn't my jam.
It
just wasn't my jam. I lasted I made it to the third commercial break, and it's not for me.
Oh, so apparently, according to David, the subtitle said "inseminated." So, well, I mean, I guess we'll just have to go with that.
The TBRU edition is what I think that is.
Total tangent here. But since you're talking about subtitles, if it's still out there, on not BET, but what's the other African American oriented station? TV One. They have an excellent music show called Unsung. It's kind of their behind the music, and they have an episode on the Jets, the family group from the 80s. I got a crush on that stuff.
Oh yeah.
The subtitles that they have for the bootlegged version on YouTube. Oh my! I was on the floor rolling because it's clearly a bot that just picked everything up, and if you can find it, I'll try to find it if it's still on there because it wasn't an official, it wasn't an official posting. But it was it was seriously one of the funniest things. It was almost as funny if you remember when bootleg DVDs were a thing prior to streaming, and there was that version of Attack of the Clones that had the captions that were auto generated from a Chinese generator, and they allied the Jedi with the Presbyterian Church. So there's all these references to the Presbyterian Church. And
this
like,
is a whole genre unto itself. There needs to be these, like, and YouTube's challenging, but there needs to be a way to disseminate this, not inseminate. This, because this is delightful. I love watching Japanese bad dub or bad translation or like kung fu movies, like a class. You know, we need this. How do we do this?
But even sometimes, with the Roku and stuff, with the function that Roku has for the captioning, I don't think they spend a lot for it, because I've seen some straight out funny stuff on Dark Shadows when Rob has left it on. And I think my favorite thing with Dark Shadows was the caption said spooky, spooky, spooky music.
If you ever watch live TV, they are not quick with it on there either. There's some really hilarious stuff that gets put out on live TV. I mean, kind of like disseminate and inseminate, but what's great is when you're like watching C-SPAN or you're, the Supreme Court, hearings and stuff like that, and just the most ridiculous stuff gets put on there. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So Brandon,
I'm sure they just captioned.
I'm sorry for that. We're 23 minutes in, so Steve, keep going with the news. Keep going with the news.
I love tangents. What are you doing?
David Toby also, Revenge of the Sith is also the one where Vader's no was do not want. Okay, so next thing, and this is kind of more of a frustration, but it is being fixed. Maybe unlike Comixology's app changes right now, but WonderCon and San Diego Comic-Con, obviously for this year, they're back in. We're going to have actually in-person cons. But unfortunately, some professionals over the past week or so have found that their professional status, and therefore the complimentary badges that they were expecting to be able to get this year, their professional status has expired over the pandemic, over the past 2 years. Now, the first year, when it was canceled in 2020, everybody got their status extended by 1 year. This did not happen in 2021. So a lot of people who were expecting to get WonderCon badges for the upcoming WonderCon, and then of course San Diego Comic-Con, are finding out that they don't have that option available this year. And unfortunately, it is way too late to get in-person, to buy an in-person standard general admission badge, at least for San Diego Comic-Con. And that's obviously a source of massive frustration for a lot of people who didn't know that this was going to be happening. So it came as a big surprise, and of course too late to do anything about it. This is slowly being fixed. So some people are finding that, Comic-Con is reaching out to them and letting them know, okay, we've extended your professional status so you can get your badges this year. Just make sure that you upgrade your status for the next year. But it's definitely really frustrating if you've been attending the con for so many years, as a professional, that, this is happening to you, especially after 2 full years in a row where you weren't able to attend for circumstances beyond your control and beyond the con's control, where they had to cancel, in-person events. And so, just a unfortunate admin glitch that's, a product of the past 2 years of cons being canceled and pushed out and rescheduled and changed around and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if anybody here knows of anyone who's had that happen to them.
I haven't asked.
Nope.
Yeah. I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite here, Steve. You have another bit of news, but I think it might make sense because of the time that we should hold that for when you talk about the book that's connected to it. We should talk about some geek gets, because one of us was a benefactor to other people. I'll start that off. I got a box from Steve and I was very happy to receive one. One of the things that's in there was a big boy bobblehead. And please be aware, folks, that the closest big boy restaurant to me is 377 miles away. So I don't have the opportunity to come across these ever. So thank you very much for that, Steve. Something else that was in the box. This is, I have now filled, this box is all the new DC comics I've received this year. I've already filled a short box, so that's how much DC I got. But one of the books now that's been added to that was a variant cover for Superman 78 #1, which is drawn by Miko Sayun. And this is signed by Wilfredo Torres, who's the actual artist in the book. And it's just a beautiful depiction of Christopher Reeve as Superman. So thank you very much for that, Steve. Some other stuff I got, I'll just go through really quick. People are looking out for me, man. Somebody sent me a Super Friends Hot Wheels from a few years ago.
Nice.
So that's nice. It's
Dang.
a 65 Pontiac GTO, but with Superman and Super Friends on that. Got a couple of videos that came in. I made a judgment call. It seems that there's lots of stuff that was Disney and under other umbrellas that with the merger from Fox, people aren't sure like how long it's going to be out of print. And I think that also affects the Marvel Knights that were put out by Shout Factory. They're not on streaming right now. I had 3 of the 4 Astonishing X-Men motion comics. I did not have the third one torn. So I saw this and I grabbed that. And though I'm on a Hanna-Barbera kick, Scooby-Doo is not exactly my jam. But I did get Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo. And if you're wondering why I got that, it's because one of the adversaries in here is the Scarecrow from DC Comics. And even it's got the little DC logo there. So at some point I will watch that. From DCBS, out of us, Caleb and Brian are far more versed in acquiring original art. I just don't. But there is a page in here I would get. Capstone puts out some of the DC Super Pets books that are drawn by Art Balthazar. They're actually like prose books, but this page that features Aquaman, Tusky the Walrus, and Storm, I would get this if it made the rounds. So
adorable.
Yeah, so Storm was a creation, and Tusky the Walrus, for that matter, was a creation that first appeared in the Filmation cartoons in the 60s. And, that was one of my earliest exposure to comic book stuff. And then lastly, one of the stores in the area got a huge bundle of Silver Age comics that were in really nice shape. Most of them were just way out of my price range. I mean, there was a Spider-Man #8 that looked like it just came right off the stands. I mean, but priced accordingly. But I did get an upgrade. This is a book I've had since I was a kid, but Brave and the Bold #62 was Starman and Black Canary. A team up of that when they were throwing everything against the wall to see what would stick and showcasing Brave and the Bold. And I got that. So those are my quick gets. And again, thank you, Steve, for the things that you contributed to the stash here.
You're welcome.
Well, I will go.
Who's next?
I'll go next. So Steve also sent me a little packy pack, and I was delighted to open it. And it's got some really great and really cool stuff. And again, thank you, because it's awesome. One of the things Steve sent me was this really just incredible book, and I can't wait to crack it open and read it. But it's called Masters of Comics. It is a look inside the studios of the world's premier graphic storytellers. That's like, I'm going to love it. I mean, you've got Milo Manara in here. There's John Paul Leone, who I'm a huge fan of. Sadly, we had to say goodbye to him. Kaluda's in here, but we won't talk about that. Frank Cho. But there's a ton. I mean, Walt Simonson's on the cover of that, so I can't wait to look into that. And then, because our boy Steve knows how much I love records, he got me basically a book on tape, but it's a record. It's mine.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got the full hardcover set of Mind Management on my shelf. I'm a huge Matt Kent fan. I love that entire series, but this is awesome. And it's got like, I haven't even opened the cellophane yet. So there's all kinds of stuff in here that I can't wait to crack open.
I had him throw in a couple things for you.
It's really cool. I cannot wait to see it. And then these cute little tattoos that you got me. Like,
yes, they're in the box.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And I want, just because it was in here, I want to shout out. Like, you gave me a flyer for these custom comic boxes that I guess a local person makes.
Local really to Charlotte. They make their own, basically custom design boxes. So if you're in the mood for those, to ask them about something, I mean, looks like a pretty cool opportunity there. So
they really are. And then while I was in Dallas, I picked up a few things because that's what I'm there for, right? So went to a record store. I'm wearing a shirt from one of the things I got. It's called Spinster Records in Dallas. Really cool shop. I'm a huge fan of funk music, and one of my top 10 guitarists of all time, I don't know why I put an S on that, is Eddie Hazel. And so I picked up his solo album. It is great. His cover of California Dreaming on here is delightful. I absolutely love it. And then I went to a couple comic book shops, but I'm going to save those for my Wolf of the Week. But when I came back to my comic shop and picked up my stuff, I added a new figure to my PVC collection.
Wow.
So I have not quite, but I'm getting a little Avengers thing happening here. And so I can't wait to order some floating shelves and actually get them put on my wall here in my office and have all of the Avengers floating around. So those are my geek gets. Really, really great stuff. And again, thanks, Steve. Like I love the mind management thing. That is awesome.
I saw that. I was like, hey, who do I know who has a record player who also really likes Matt Kent? So,
Brian, do you have anything to show off?
Well, so I only have the Steve care package to show off because I have not been to my LCS in some time. I would have potentially had some stuff after I came back from Japan, but it didn't happen. So Steve, I love you. You're amazing. I did have to look up this because I didn't realize Scarf Comics is Seattle and San Francisco, I believe, like West Coast based indie comics. Where did you get this? I'm curious if you were
from my LCS. So my LCS has been carrying a lot of local zines. There's a former employee from the shop has his own zine that he contributes to that he has there. But then also occasionally they'll have some other great zines that pop up, and I always tend to pick those up. And I thought, hey, that looks pretty cool. Or I might enjoy that.
Seattle and San Diego, San Francisco based, which I two cities that I love a lot. And of course, good friend of the show, Joe Glass, as mentioned. Yep. I think previously we talked about this, the Glitter Vipers.
Yep.
Pin that was released that I don't think I got a copy already. I didn't go through my pin collection extensively, but I appreciate, because I don't know if you can see, but these are all pins from all over curling and geekdom and everything. And of course, the piece de resistance that I don't quite know what to do with, Steve. I will be honest.
I know the size. Literally, there were two sizes. There was that size and like an XS. So
I mean, I could have rocked the baby tee. No, I'm just kidding. No, well, you're closer in this sense, but this is a shirt. So, my camera just decided to die. I apologize. Hopefully, you can still hear me. So, and it's a delightful. Oh, there we go. So I am a not frequenter of Hawaii, but I've been to the state of Hawaii many times, and I love Hawaii. But I've never been to the Big Island, and I love that you found this delightful shirt tent. Enjoy Comics from Hilo, Hawaii, which is Big Island. Yep. Because I do have a small now collection of Hawaiian-centric merchandise, like T-shirts from breweries and stuff. Anyway, I will find something to do with this, even if it's probably not wear it ever.
So one of the things that we were thinking about doing, Jason, because Jason, of course, is a tailor, seamstress, costume maker, of making it into a halter top.
I was actually thinking, like, if I could find a way to incorporate into my drag aesthetic, like if I ever get Leona out of the closet again, I would I think there's something there, but
yes. Put a belt on it and it becomes a shirt dress, basically.
I appreciate that, and I love your little Valentine. This is very sweet. I mean, Steve, those of you who don't know Steve from other than the show, you probably get a good sense of, because he is who he is. But like delightful, adorable little Valentine, and so like handwritten and thoughtful. You're an amazing human, Steve.
If you can read my chicken scratch, I applaud you.
It's about as legible as mine, so I was able to figure it out. But I just want you to know that I will be seeing more of you in the near future. My brother just moved to Charlotte. Not that you're in Charlotte anymore, by the way. We're just giving away everybody's
close, an hour away.
But my point is, my brother and his family and my mother will all be residents of North Carolina in this year. So you will be seeing a lot more of me in the near future.
Yay! I'm so excited.
And back to the East Coast. I mean, all of our friends, and so not this year, but I think next year, 2023 Heroes, we got to make it happen, because I want to bring my nephew to Heroes.
You are going to be missed this year. That's
so bummed. Yep. But it's understandable. And I'm so excited Heroes is back. But yes.
Yes.
Anyway, all I'm saying is, Steve, salute. You're a god among men, and thank you for the geek gets. Next time
Steve got nothing. Steve got nothing.
No, you guys have given me enough. This past year, like, definitely, I've been really, really happy with all of the fun stuff that I've gotten, and of course, because I never get out, I don't really get much. So, but I'm glad you enjoyed.
All right. Well, it's high time we started talking about some comic books. So, Steve, you're a lucky charm when it comes to starting the cycle here. So, why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying?
So, one of the things I was trying to figure out, like, which one I talk about first, because there's a book that I really, really enjoyed, and I'm going to do something weird and talk about a book I don't enjoy, or I didn't enjoy all that much. And because it was part of the news segment, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. And talk about Trigger Warnings Red Room #1. This is not the controversial issue in question, or the controversial cover in question. But just this past week, we had a little bit of an internet kerfuffle when the...
I was just going to say kerfuffle. If you weren't able to find a word. That's like me thinking about Madeleine Albright this week out of nowhere, and then you hear she died.
Yep, it's your
kerfuffle.
Must have done it. I'm just getting the psychic vibes. But basically, the solicits for issue #3 were posted, and of course all the variant covers, because Red Room, Ed Piskor's Red Room, has a ton of variants for the original Red Room series, and then of course this is the second volume, and one of those. Done by his very dear friend Jim Rugg, and also partner on the podcast Comics Kayfabe, was an homage of a sort to Mouse, Art Spiegelman's Mouse. Unfortunately, it also featured a scene of severe torture, which is part of what the Red Room is, and it immediately was. I guess labeled just really offensive, specifically for the fact that they're featuring essentially a cover based on a Holocaust memoir to, I guess, sell a book that's about torture porn. So not really something that went over very well. Jim Rugg quickly apologized for it. They did, retract it. Fantagraphics also retracted the cover. They're not going to go forward with that. Jim Rugg does have variant cover versions for all the other issues that have come out that are more homage style to comics and zines and different indie creators of the 70s and 80s. But this was one that just was in poor taste. I mean, if you wanted to do Art Spiegelman, there's other Art Spiegelman work that he could have done. But specifically because this was very recognizable, it's Mouse, it really didn't go over very well with a lot of people. And he quickly apologized for it. Ed Piskor, of course, didn't apologize for it, but that's his persona, which leads me to the actual content of the book, Red Room. So this is, again, the second volume, Trigger Warnings. Clearly the title kind of gives it away. And if you aren't aware of the Red Room series, this is a book series about essentially a dark web streaming collective or group that puts out the most violent, horrific torture porn that you can possibly think of. And the artwork illustrates this very, very graphically. The dialogue is very much rough and terrible. It shows like the worst of the worst, the most horrific underbelly. Every page is attempting to shock and really highlight the gruesome nature of what he's trying to get across. What's the most offensive? How far can you push that line? Where is that line? Can you go past it? And the closest thing I can think of in terms of aesthetic quality would be maybe Crossed. If you've ever read any of the Crossed books put out under Avatar Press, where it's just, what's the most horrific thing that you can think of? Let's go ahead and draw that, and let's write about it. Basically, that's what this is. This story, however, in this particular volume, kind of is told in an interesting way, where you have two sides of the same story on the top and bottom of the pages. So on the top page, it's mostly the daughter of one of the torture porn perpetrators, sort of having her interactions with her father. The bottom part of the page is the father in his other life working with this collective that are creating this content. And then of course the center of every page is the graphic imagery that you've come to expect from Red Room, the actual torture happening. And I know I'm not showing too much of this because I can't, thankfully. It is very gruesome. It's very EC reminiscent, which I think is part of what Ed Piskor was really going for. Pre Code days, very, very gruesome, very gritty. But some of it, of course, the commentary, there's a running sort of internet chat commentary that goes throughout the whole thing that really just highlights the most vile type of person who would really enjoy this. And, that's part of the commentary I think that he's making here. Is he doing it in a way that's, very critical of this? I don't know. He might have gone to the point where instead of being a commentary on what the most horrific and terrible and gruesome thing that you can possibly read about, write about, draw, etc., to just how far can I push it and gross people out, and when will I be canceled because I need to find some way to cancel myself just to show that my edgelordiness is right. I don't know.
I feel like you're onto something, and I haven't listened to their podcast as much, but I did pick up the first issue of Red Room because I love Ed Piskor. Mm-hmm. I think he's done some amazing work.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Great storyteller, great unique style, all this stuff. But I didn't understand what, other than what you've said, which I do agree with, what Red Room was supposed to be. And it kind of bothered me because and it probably is meant to challenge, but by also putting it out there very straightforward without that sort of like innate like criticism built in an overt way. At least the issues that I read like the first couple. I just think it just put that content back out there in a way. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I was curious, besides, Steve, you've boiled this down very well. Has anybody else, Caleb or Bill, have you read this? Have you seen any of the Red Room stuff?
No. And there's been things that he's done in the past that I've enjoyed, like naturally the hip hop volumes and the grand design. Mm-hmm. But just looking at the write-up, this was nothing that invited me in.
Yeah.
So Brian, like you, I read the first issue, like because I'm an Ed Piskor fan, or at least I should say I'm a fan of Ed Piskor's work. Full disclosure, very much losing patience with his persona. I was watching I enjoy watching their interviews and stuff because I like comic culture and stuff like that, obviously. But I just, you can only call other creators quote unquote jobbers for doing work for Marvel and DC so many times, and then your biggest paycheck comes from Marvel. for all involved, before I just think you're hypocritical to the extent that I can't stand you anymore. So like that, like I have issues with that, and who gives a shit what I think, really? I mean, but read the first issue. I like underground comics, right? Comics with an X, the San Francisco movement. I like, as controversial as it is, I like R. Crumb. I like what he did. I like those old headshot books because they actually were subversive. They were subversive in the sense that they had a point. They undermined they didn't undermine polite society. They undermined expectations. Nothing about this book undermined expectations. It just is showing you that there are terrible people out there. There was nothing satirical about this. If you read R. Crumb stuff, there is it's not satire, but there is a satirical slant to it. And this is not that. This wants to be. I jokingly call it dollar store subversion. It walks right up to the line of having a point, having something to say. About culture at large, about our obsession with internet culture, about the fact that we will show extreme violence on Friday night television, but we won't show a nipple. Like it walks right up to the point of that, of our political disenfranchisement, but it never crosses the line. I think and I don't know, I was waiting for it to, because I was like, okay, Ed Piskor talks in the game. And it just never did. And I'm like, oh, dude, you just bricked the free throw, maybe you just didn't want to. Maybe you didn't want to rile up the wrong. Because let's be very honest, there's a subset of his fan base that are the ones who bought the comic that made this the big Fantagraphics bestseller of all time, that aren't quite Comicsgate, but they're Comicsgate adjacent.
I to your point, I went to Fantagraphics storefront here in Seattle, and you're right. It is prominently featured, and I mean, there was at least one guy, and I'm not who knows? They could have been a very liberal, amazing person, whoever, but it was a little weird, and they were into it, and I was like, oh, this is not what you. I mean, maybe this is what he wants. I don't know. Ed Piskor was always a very he's a cipher at conventions, I never got a good beat on him, talking to him or observing him. And then again, through this podcast, which I've heard brief, excerpts, and the interviews are good. Also the Todd McFarlane, Neil Gaiman trial that they would read the transcript.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. That's good. But the rest of this, I'm just uncomfortable. And I don't know if he's being an iconoclast for iconoclasm. Is that right? Iconoclast. Anyway, for that, but its sake, or he's just an edgelord, which there's two sides of the same coin, right? So I'm curious to know and really understand what his intent is with this, and if it is. I don't think it is as successful in that way as he thinks. Maybe. So
I think I'm past it. Yeah, I think one interesting thing.
Oh no, I was just
about this is it seems the bigger finger wagging is at Piskor, and not Jim Rugg, who actually drew the image. Because I do think it comes from two areas. I do think that Jim Rugg's apology was sincere. I think that they were in this mindset, and they didn't. I buy that he may have been in the mindset. And if you look at some of the other covers, there's a causal link to them. You would understand the puddle jump, but you should also know that there are certain playing with imagery that's off bounds. When you are talking about genocide and just the worst aspects of humanity. And I don't really have a comic book or even literature analogy to make, but I'm not somebody that's I'm not averse to subversive material. If you have been on my feed and know me, you know that one of my favorite music acts of all time is Throbbing Gristle. And I think they're musically, and also in terms of the imagery that they would employ, were a very good example of, and it's interesting that you mentioned this, but I would say satire-free subversion. That there is a place for it. There is a place for that type of commentary. And I think some of this with Piskor is he comes off to me certainly more than Rugg as mercenary.
Yeah.
And that's, I think the more and more we're seeing behaviors and outcome like this, the more that's apparent.
Well, and I want to say, just in regards to the cover that we're talking about, I don't think that there was anything direct. Like, I don't think they were trying to hurt anyone's feelings. Like, I don't think that there was, like, I agree with what Steve said. I think it was in poor taste. I don't think that there was anything about doing it that they were intentionally trying to stir up, controversy. I really do think that they were, in their minds, this was just similar to an indie comic that blew up, just like they did the homage, or the pastiche of the Ninja Turtles. The first book. Like, they were taking all these underground comics, and showing it up like that. I don't, negligence, not malice. That's so in defense of those two, I will say that. But it's just, like, so somebody in a group of that we're part of, and the chats were talking about this, and they were saying, well, I really don't understand why this is a big deal. Mike Mignola draws Nazis in all of his books because he likes drawing Nazis. To which I said, okay, well, exactly. That's the thing. He's like, this is, what does this matter? To which I said, look, okay, there's a difference. There is a difference between showing Indiana Jones fighting nameless, made up Nazis for the sake of a period piece, for a plot set in that world, than showing Anne Frank, to sell, shoes, something unrelated to that story. Like, there's a major difference. Bill, one of my favorite musicals is The Producers. Springtime and Hitler is funny. But it's there's a difference in using that than just to sell an unrelated product.
And I think you've hit it. Like, I don't even think Nazi imagery is offhand.
No, not at all.
From reinterpretation. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen in a comic book is when, in one of the issues of Swamp Thing after Moore, and Rick Veitch uses the swastika as part of a mathematical equation.
Yeah,
that's jarring. And that, like, I'm not against uses like that. I'm not against. But
Mouse is
everything I'm going to say has already been said, and by more eloquent people than myself. And just one last thing: how this got past Fantagraphics editorial baffles me.
That part.
That I think is the surprise, and I think some of it.
I'm certain that there are circumstances where you just let the creators run free, and I'm certain that there have been many times in the past where that the stewards of a publisher did that, and it was consequence free, and they're used to it. I'm certain that there are certain creators, the Hernandez brothers, just to feed into Fantagraphics, I imagine they're like remarkably hard to edit. It's easier to just step back. But how this particular image didn't raise a red flag with anybody before they allowed it for publication, dissemination, worked in that baffles me.
Well, and look, even if Spiegelman had have greenlit this, because we were talking about that, somebody said, well, what if Spiegelman had said this? Okay, it doesn't matter. To me, I mean, the book is very personal to Spiegelman and his family, and it being a Holocaust narrative, but that book is so much more than what Spiegelman did. That book means so much more to so many. It is so culturally relevant, especially this close to the quote unquote blacklisting of the book. But it's so much more than just that work to so many people. Sometimes a piece of art becomes more than itself, more than its creator, and more than its intent. And the Mouse is such a case. I mean,
okay.
Just one last thought from David here. Sadly, I think it's willful ignorance. It may be negligent, but it doesn't mean that it's not malicious. I mean, it is possible. It is a possibility. I don't, with Jim Rugg's apology for it, I think it was less malicious and probably something that's like, hey, this looks like a good idea. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do something about this because it's a big indie comic, and everybody's going to know it, and it's going to be shocking because all of them are based on the shock value of the image that's being created for this book for Red Room. But yeah, this was just one of those maybe take a look and say no. Good, go with the second idea.
Okay.
So anyway, think we've talked this one to death. So
okay, all right, Brian. I think we need you to cheer us up a little bit with whatever you're going to talk about.
Oh Lord, I don't know if it's going to cheer you up.
Let's switch gears.
So, the funny books, the Marvel comics, the X books. That's my beat, right? I feel like that's my beat these days. As I have a very pedestrian comics experience. It's upbeat. We're talking about life. We're talking about death. Specifically of Wolverine in the X books. So the Krakoan age is upon us. It has been a Krakoan age for a while, but the post-Hickman Krakoa age is fully upon us now. This X lives or 10 lives of Wolverine and 10 deaths of Wolverine or X, whatever. It's an interesting experiment that they did. Two different narratives that eventually do crossover, intertwined in a bi-weekly schedule and in all the classic form that embodies. If you can keeping up with the X books and a Krakoa, the post Inferno Krakoa status, we know that Moira, good old Moira McTaggart, long-standing ally, helper, friend of the X-Men and mutants in general. At the Inferno kind of got a raw deal in a little way. Like, I don't know, I guess this is sort of Hickman's intent because he wrote Inferno, which I did not know until recently was actually originally called with the 10 Lives of Moira X, which I did not understand, did not realize, and did not, I think is a far more appropriate title. But either way, she kind of turned a corner in her relationship to mutants in that title, and the X Deaths of Wolverine part of this event follow up with that, and it's a very interesting. I think we've talked about it a little bit. The conclusion of which does kind of bookend this X Lives and X Deaths series. In a way that I will get into in a second. And I want to get a little bit of a consensus. I know at least Steve and possibly Caleb have also read this. Yeah. So the X Lives of Wolverine.
I will have you know that I did pre-order whatever that X-Men Wolverine Hickman one shot that's coming up. So I'm not completely out of the loop.
Is this that Infinite one? The one that he did as a digital and then they're collecting it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's going to be interesting. I'm honestly a little more excited about that. So I should back up to say this whole series, by the way, is written by Ben Percy. Art, X Lives, which we'll talk about in a second, is Joshua Cassara. And X Deaths is Federico Vicentini. Neither of which I am very familiar with. So bear that as it might. I mean, it may have there may be other works that I'm forgetting that they did, but the X Lives, the 10 Lives. I don't know. This is so complicated. Why did Hickman have to make this fucking ambiguity between the two? Like, we've always lived with Roman numeral ambiguity, right? If somebody,
I'm also wondering, where did that start? Did that start with Morrison, where he had that casual reference where Weapon X was not Weapon X, it was Weapon 10?
You're probably
right. Where that started?
You're probably right. Yeah. But I don't know. Hickman didn't he put it out there. It's a thing, and in Moira's sense, it is a specific thing. In the Wolverine X Lives of Wolverine or 10 Lives of Wolverine, it's not 10. It's not exact. So anyway, be that as it may, the Lives of Wolverine is a little bit more of a retrospective exploration of Wolverine's life in totality as the current incarnation of Logan jumps around to save Xavier's life, a la Terminator, like the original Terminator. So he will jump in to stop Omega Red from possessing different people around Charles or Charles's not progeny, but his ancestors. The S stands for Superman. What's David Toby going on about? The S stands for Superman. I don't track. Anyway, I will tell you my favorite moment from X Lives, and I don't know if y'all agree with this. So Omega Red is jumping into like, oh, the maid, oh, I don't remember who else, random other people. Oh, doesn't he jump into like Creed maybe, Sabretooth? I don't know. Mm-hmm. He jumps into people. Mm-hmm. He jumps into a fucking whale.
Yep.
And that was the moment I went, all right, I see what you're doing here. This is big Kirby Comics with a capital C. Like, this is big idea. And I love that. I love that. That's fun. That's fun. And then, of course, you know, spoilers. We're spoiling some stuff here. Not everything, probably. But, you know, he jumps into Wolverine at some point. Omega Red possesses Wolverine. It's a whole thing. And that, you know, lasts about a second. But either way, the whale was very memorable. I really appreciate that. But if you're a fan of Wolverine's lore, it gets deep. It gets deeper than I have. And I'm an X-Men fan, and I did not know about some of the shit. It gets into Romulus, which I think I must have missed. This sort of like grandfather Wolverine thing that existed. It gets into, and I did miss the whole Dawkins stuff. Like when they introduced Dawkins and all that, I missed all that. But it gets into the crossover of the Web of Venom with Wolverine, which I also missed.
I totally, it went, I was like, why is he Venom now? Yeah. What is this? With the spiral, what happened? How does this have to do with Vietnam? Well, there was a one shot.
Yeah, there's a lot of deep cuts there, but they were hitting very quick, and like you had to like be on your game to catch them, and almost because there really wasn't a narrative connection. Like a lot of it was just like throwing spaghetti at the wall, and
Okay, thank you so much, because you're always a validation point for my innate like sense. The problem with this whole thing is it's so fucking confusing.
Yeah, it is. It's been hard to follow.
Not only you're jumping back and forth week to week between X Lives and X Deaths or 10 to whatever. Then within a book, there's jumping around among all the different time frames that Wolverine is finding himself. And I get the idea of it, but the execution, unfortunately, although I do think X Lives is stronger art-wise than X Deaths. X Deaths is a very throwbacky style that I did not enjoy with the whole Moira stuff, but that's whatever. That's just a preference. That's a preference. The art's fine. It's just it gave me like PTSD from that era, right? And not in a good way. But just it's confusing narratively. I do appreciate one technique he uses, Ben uses, where he will intercut the sort of inner monologue over the action.
Yeah.
So it's not just punchy punch and stabby stab. It's actual like looking back and thinking about it. And I like that sort of like almost like you're putting the brakes on the action a bit and giving that introspection. It's really nice. But I don't otherwise love the storytelling in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And
which is strange. Yeah. Because Ben Percy's really good. And he's a really good Wolverine writer. So yeah, no, I'm with you on it. But
X Deaths, to that same idea, like it's a little more straightforward because you're not jumping around as much, at least up front. It's all about Moira trying to survive, Mystique coming after her, and then the Wolverine from the future who's possessed with a phalanx is trying to kill her. All that's pretty straightforward. There was a lovely little like sort of moment with the Wolverine family, which we really have never done. You've had Wolverine be the dad of Dawkins and the progenitor of Laura and Scout, which I don't know enough about Scout. I'll be honest, I should.
No, it's the honey badger. She don't give a fuck. It's awesome.
That's what I thought. She was Honey Badger, and I was like, "Why'd you call her Scout?" But either way, all of that is in there, and they have a lovely moment as a family, which I really and it was nice. It was lovely, and I love the Phalanx. Don't get me wrong, Phalanx is always great, and I actually do like that it's fulfilling some of the Phalanx stuff that Hickman seeded in the story, but they had never picked up with it. So now I'm wondering if this is sort of the crumbs that Hickman left, and like they're getting to play with that. But either way, I just didn't like the art style of that book as much. It was very throwback 90s 2000s, like in a not great way.
Was that Cassara?
Yeah, that was Cassara.
Yeah.
But I just don't know, it didn't resonate. The end, it does dovetail the two. So here's the thing, if you don't know how to read it, and I'm guessing if you read it every week as it came out, it would make more sense. But if you're like me and you kind of go, oh shit, we're going to be on a podcast, we need to talk about comics, what am I not reading right now? Oh crap, I got to read Wolverine. So I did a lot of that today in a bathtub. And it was, I guessed correctly, that you're supposed to read, you can read them interchangeably. They don't align until the end, but you should read X Lives before you read X Deaths, number 5. Mm-hmm. And that tracks, right? Life before death. Okay, fine. But there was no editor note. There was no like, don't read this until you've done the homework. And so anyway, all I'm saying is Lives before Deaths, and you will be good. So, but yes, tell me if I'm wrong, because I feel like I missed stuff. Maybe I was confused, but so far,
no, you're. I don't think you're wrong at all. Like I said, I've had a really hard time keeping up with what's happening, and partially because we read a lot of comics. There's a lot of stuff getting read in between these, but yeah, it's kind of, it seems like it's jumping all over the place, and because I am reading them weekly as they come out. Sometimes I forget what happened in which book, and so like I'm reading Life, and I'm like, wait, well, did this have having to go back and put it together like a puzzle? But I do think conceptually, again, I like Ben Percy as a writer. I also just like Ben Percy. He's A, hot, B, has a voice that's deep as shit. Like, could get it. Like, he'll do this. Yeah,
it's like Barry White, Brian.
Oh
it's
my
like
god,
that deep. Yeah,
dude, it is like just moisture just every time he talks. It's
moisture.
Just I'm gonna have to fan. Yeah, no, dude, he could get it. So he's now on my list of comic book creators that I get to have. But he's doing some cool stuff conceptually, right? Like you said, in both books, they're talking about possession. One of which is an enemy doing the possessing. The other one is the Phalanx doing the possessing. So like, and they're coming from different directions. One book focuses on the past. The other book is from the future. So like they're it's flying by. So there's some cool stuff conceptually that they're doing, but I'm just having a really hard time just threading the needles together, like putting it all together to really understand what's going on, because especially with how it relates to Moira. And understatement of the century when you said she kind of turned the corner on how she thinks about mutants. She's now completely on the other side of the ball, and how that's going to. She's no longer a mutant. Like, she's back to being just normal Moira, and she's got umbrage about it, obviously. And she's also like lost an arm. So now there's things with like, so it's been really hard to really figure out what story's being told. Cause it feels like there's like 3 stories being told here.
There really are. And I think it's because there's also 2 separate bad guys in each book. So the bad guy in X Lives is ostensibly Omega Red, because that's what's going on, but then also the Russian guy who's been pulling the strings, Mikhail. Yeah, who's been pulling the strings with Colossus, and in X-Force and all of that. It's been kind of going on in the background. And then, of course, in X Deaths, it's Moira. But I think the issue here that really kind of is frustrating, and I think probably the most frustrating thing about X Deaths, because I do like both of them. I enjoy the story in X Deaths a little bit better. It's a little bit easier to follow, mostly because the time jumping is a little bit difficult when you've got the narration that's kind of going over it, and the narration is in present time, but everything that's happening is
if they had done distinct art styles. There's not as much, like, some comics have done that effectively and used the color palette or the art style to really set a tone, but they didn't do that. Not as much as they needed to. Yeah.
No, and I too kind of agree with the throwback art style. It's Federico Vincentini who's on X Deaths. That's very sort of like late 90s, early 2000s, like that kind of house style, I guess, sort of, where it was just almost every comic had that kind of style. I mean, I'm enjoying it, but I'm kind of frustrated by the whole Moira heel turn, because there's a throwaway line. I want to say it's either in the last issue of Inferno or the first issue of X Deaths, where it's just like, yeah, I've always been wanting the mutants to die. It was just kind of like, you know, she actually this whole time was like, yeah, I'm giving you this, but you know, you probably don't deserve it, and I'm probably going to kill you anyway, or something like this. Some like weird throwaway line where she's like, she's always kind of been evil.
It's a commentary. The only thing I can forgive is it's a commentary on you live long enough and you will become the villain. That's the only thing I can hang on to of that, because otherwise, bullshit. This person has reincarnated 10 times, and only on the 10th, maybe not, because they really didn't explore each of the lives that detail, like that you become that villainous, like that you just go, you know what, fuck mutants. Every other life, she is trying to make it work. So I don't buy it at all. And I said this, I think, about Inferno number 4. I didn't love the way it ended, because I don't necessarily buy that that's the Moira of old, of the comics that we know. And I loved that at one point Hickman had set her up as this new interesting thing, and she had this new angle, but she was still the same Moira we cared about, that we knew and we loved. And now that is not her at all. This is Nimrod level, almost mustache twirling Terminator Moira, right? In the end. And it's just, I don't buy it. If that's what Hickman wanted and intended, fine, whatever. Who knows? But I don't like it either way.
I think it's there is something to be said, though, about the fact that she was betrayed by Xavier to an extent, and hurt by him, because she does remember all of the lives and everything.
But that's reductive. I feel like that's reductive, because it makes
I agree.
So much like she's spurned by her lover, and that's a very women misogynistic trope. And I mean, again, this person has given 10 of her lives, of decades and decades and decades, and in some lives, I think centuries, to this cause, and then this one turn by this humans are crazy and they do weird shit. Humans. But because it's a woman, I get a little protective and about it.
No, and
also there's the other aspect too. With, again, going with the woman thing, where Destiny and Mystique have been harboring this grudge the entire time as well. Yeah. That it's like, this is the whole reason why I can't have my wife, because Moira's alive. We're just going to destroy her, and in doing so, destroy everything. Which it's just sort of like, what I don't like. I get there's some frustration there, but I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't buy like the speed at which all the dominoes fell, and I'm like, this is.
Well, I think Hickman.
We already kind of went through something like this is the end of the world for when Onslaught came back for 5 issues.
I think Hickman wanted to have somebody spend more time developing this. I think that's what Al Ewing was supposed to be doing. Right. And because that's not there as connective tissue, it all feels very rushed and sudden and kind of out of nowhere, right? Yeah. And if that had been there, if Hickman had decided it was a priority, or Marvel or whoever, it may have been more earned, but it's just not. So yeah, I don't know like that. It'll probably go away for a while and then come back at some point. But for now, I'm just kind of like, meh. Anyway, Bill, you said you read some of it. I know you definitely were.
Well, no. I have to say the only Piercy that I've read on Wolverine were his issues of 10 of Swords, Cross of Swords, which I thought were by far the best in that series.
Oh yeah,
like there wasn't even anything close to that. And that new villain, that sassy, cocky villain that they introduced, I thought he was fantastic.
Arakan,
yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah. I also this blows me away that out of us, it looks like I'm the one that has the Web of Venom series. So now I'm like interested in seeing where Wolverine factors into that. It just seems to me, as somebody who's kind of an outsider right now, is that the intent of providing more connective tissue between the various aspects of the X world that Hoxpox was supposed to do. It seems it's like worse than ever. It it sounds from your description sometimes in the space of the same book that it is so fragmented. So that I find that to be a really interesting development.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I worried that this might happen. I don't know how tight Hickman was controlling the writers when he was the sort of the writers' room, whatever. But it's not. We're not off to a great start. I hope that when Kieran Gillen comes in with the new X book and they kind of get on with this next phase, it might right itself. But this event was troubled. Again, it's in weird ways because the lives works in a way as like a sort of a Terminator-y man out of time thing, but it's confusing. And the deaths work in that you have this badass, Wolverine phalanx thing and this story and this, but then the Moira stuff doesn't ring true. So it's,
Okay. All right. We do have to move on. So I'm going to throw it over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying.
Well, right now I'm looking at pictures of Ben Percy online. I'm really enjoying that.
I was going to say that post is like, so,
you were
kicking up your heels on the bed, listening to some LPs.
You were not kidding. I have not heard his voice yet, but the pictures I saw, yes.
That's Bay. I'll fight you for him. He is yummy to me. Anyway, okay, so let's get serious. So I read a book this week. It's nominated for an Eisner, so I was trying to read through some of these things, and it's queer related. So I thought, okay, I should read this and bring it to the show and talk about it, and I did. And I think Steve, you read this as well, or you have it at least, correct?
Read it. In fact, finished reading it tonight.
Very cool. So I picked up and read the new book by Alison Bechdel, The Secret to Superhuman Strength. And I can't wait to hear what you think about this, Steve. So just kind of a broad overview about the book, because it is a longer book. The book kind of tells three stories in one. Like Bechdel is wont to do, it is a graphic memoir. It's a story about her life, and it really starts from the very beginning of her life. It walks you all the way through it until the present day. It does so through the lens of kind of a, not only her, but just American culture's obsession with fitness at large and all the different fitness gadgets. Alison Bechdel is a workout freak. She very early on in her adolescence, especially during puberty, clumsy, not fitting in, found working out to be a release. It was a way for her to move forward in the world. As she became an adult, she gets into yoga. She gets into Buddhism. Different types of working out. She becomes a runner. She starts to get that runner euphoria as she accepts her queer identity. There's obviously the slightly homophobic lesbian jokes about Subarus and kayaks, but she gets into like outdoorsy sports, hiking. Just kind of everything. And she tracks it along with culture's obsession with fitness. And really what it's about is her ability to control herself, which I can really relate to because, I've lost a ton of weight this past year and I'm really into working out. And it really is about controlling, what you can control. So I really respect that. The other part of this that she's playing in the sandbox is that she's using this to really talk about enlightenment and betterment of the self mentally. And so she gets into talking about some of the literary transcendentalists, even into some of like the beatnik poets and writers from the early 1900s. But she goes all the way back to, just the 1700s and all of these, people who in the past were, doing drugs and they were not very good, socialite people, but they created amazing poetry and they broke boundaries. And, several of them were women, but were just to do all these kind of cool things. She also connects it with Buddhism and enlightenment and transcendentalism. So it was really great. And she does all this, like I said, through telling her life story. And she walks you through the decades from her growing up, her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her father, who, both of those people, as their marriage diverged, her father was a closeted gay man. Her mother was a very kind of controlling figure. So then as she grows up, she starts to realize that she's adopted some of the things that she doesn't like about her parents, but she's molded them into things she likes about herself. She uses it to talk about her relationships with the women who have been part of her life on and off. Interestingly enough, she turned to sports and exercise for reasons of her own independence, but she rarely is without a partner. Throughout, like any of these books, she's rarely single. She really doesn't know how to be for most of her life, and I found it to be a really compelling, fun story. I found it to be very slow too. I thought it was really interesting the way that she weaves it in, and she talks about some of these early literary writers. I mean, my undergrad's in creative writing, so I've read a lot of these folks. Even up into to talking about the books from the early 1920s, where you get into some of the beatniks and the folks who are traveling around the countries and hopping trains and taking a lot of peyote and these mind-altering substances, that she relates to the altering substance of that you get when you're exercising. It's almost euphoria. She does talk about her borderline alcoholism. She doesn't ever come out and say I was an alcoholic, but she talks about how she would drink a lot in this book, and then how she kind of wrapped that up and got that under control, to where then she rarely drinks. So it was fun. I will say, this is not my favorite book that she has written. I'm a huge fan of her comic strips. I love Dykes to Watch Out For. I think that's like, I've got the hardcover sitting somewhere. I think it's phenomenal. Obviously, I like Fun Home. I think you have to. So I don't know if you have to, but it's a wonderful book. I don't think this is up to par on that. I don't know that it needs to be. I think this started out as an exploration of her, of not even just exercise, of an exploration of maybe her relationship with her family, and it turned into something else during the pandemic, that she wrote, and she morphed this into a different narrative. And she was, very isolated, like we all were, like we all kind of, some of us still are, and she was focused on her body and her own health, mental and physical. And it really turned into this other story. Also, an obsession with Patagonia, because why not? So, but it is compelling. I enjoyed the book. Don't get me wrong. I don't know that it's Eisner worthy. That's just my opinion. I've read some other stuff this year that wasn't nominated that I think probably deserved a spot on that. But it's Alison Bechdel, and she kind of gets to be an Eisner nominee if she writes a book. That just seems to be the rule. Along with several other people that get Eisner noms, and for some reasons that I don't know. But like, this is a good book. Don't get me wrong. It's not as good as Fun Home or Dykes to Watch Out For, but I hold those in very high regard. The cartooning is kind of what you expect to get from her. She is not constrained by bless you. She's not constrained by panels. She does these really cool things on several pages where she is very free flowing, very loose. But it's very simplistic storytelling. Very, very gorgeous coloring. It is, you can really see that her roots are in strip comics, and that she is a cartoonist at heart. So I thought this was great. And this is a book that I read at the right time, because it is very much a thing with me where I'm focused on my body, and I'm focused about how I feel when I'm working out, and translating that into maybe being a better person, and not just being a harder worker, which is something I struggle with because I'm a workaholic. And she's a workaholic, and she explores some of those things, but being a better person mentally, and kind of like elevating my own attitude and my own relationships in my life, and focusing on my partner, and focusing on the smaller things, which she has to constantly remind herself to do, and I constantly have to remind myself to do. So it was a great exploration. I'm really glad I read it. I took away a lot from this book, and I think it's worth the read. I think you should definitely go check this out. It will speak to you in a number of ways, because it is playing in a couple different sandboxes. So, Steve, what did you think about it? I'd love to hear it, man.
I would say, it's definitely not my favorite thing that I've read of hers, but you'd mentioned it. This book definitely had started as one thing and became something totally different in the development. So she actually mentions it, where she was writing a book about relationships, and she was trying to figure out how to write this book of relationships. And meanwhile, her own life had really been centered around not just relationships with her family and the relationship with her many girlfriends. It makes it sound terrible, but no, she's had a string of relationships, very serious ones and some long-lasting ones.
A serial monogamist.
Yes,
to a point. Yeah,
exactly. And she talks about trying polyamory and all sorts of things. She's very open about that. But somewhere in the course of writing that book about relationships, she discovered that she's really writing about her relationship to her own body and to her own mental health and her own idea of herself, because self plays a big thing in there when she talks about transcendentalism, and her relationship to just life itself. And I like how she weaves in a lot of stuff with Kerouac and Margaret Fuller and all these different Wadsworth. Like she just brings everybody in. Because those people were also on spiritual journeys about understanding themselves in the world, and they saw themselves kind of outside of a lot of these things, and it gave them that perspective to see how they could really understand their place, if there was a place for them.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, as well, Holly, her wife, did the colors in this book.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know that.
Not only about this book about being about relationships, but the final bit of it is a product of her current relationship, her current wife. But yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. There's a lot of times where you're just kind of reading it, going, "Oh man, I know." You need to see a therapist. And it's like, and then she goes to the therapy and she's not getting anything out of it because she's just fighting what they're telling her not to do. And she's just, no. I just need to find another hobby, another.
I just have to say, I am not as familiar with her work. I have seen Fun Home on Stage, and I have read Are You My Mother? I have that. This sounds like the exact same terrain as Are You My Mother?
It's very similar. In fact, her mom is...
especially because you have, and there's some really nice moments in that, especially as they track the counterbalance between her phone conversations with her mother and then what's actually said during the therapy sessions.
Yeah,
but this sounds like the exact same thing.
It's
for
similar.
anybody who's read both, how are they different?
Well, this takes...
book is broader.
It doesn't really... Yeah, it doesn't go really into so much with her mother until probably the last maybe quarter of the book.
Yeah.
With her mother's health declining, and it's happening at the same time that Alison's health is kind of she's not at the fitness level that she was in her 20s anymore, where she's going through menopause, where she's certain parts of her body aren't working the way that they should anymore, and just constantly being hammered with her sense of self-worth, because she's a workaholic, and if she's not working, or if she's not making it so that she has to work to meet that deadline, which she puts all this pressure on herself, and meanwhile she's getting all these health problems. It's just this big massive rolling snowball of course as a reader, that she's slowly understanding over 40 plus years of herself and her body.
What I really appreciated the most too by the end of the book is that she kind of has this breakthrough where everything culminates. And in her study of these transcendentalist writers, like you said, Wadsworth being, and Kerouac being two of those that are very, very prominently featured throughout this book, but also her Buddhist faith that she talks about throughout the book, and she talks about meditation and talks about reading these daily affirmations, and then kind of her obsession with physicality, which also ties into her understanding of mortality. She kind of has this breakthrough at the end of the book where she talks about, where I achieved, like this enlightenment that I achieved was almost a very simple thing that I always knew, but I had to go through a whole lot to understand the simplicity of just being in the moment. Like that. And again, that's something like we all said, oh, you've got to be in the moment, but what does that really mean? And what is because there's always a ton of things happening at once, even right now. Like, what does being in the moment mean? And she has this breakthrough, and it really just tied into her her meditations on Buddhism and some of the Buddhist teachings. I actually reached out to our friend Wendy and said, "Dude, you need to read this book. I think you would really love it." Because it talks about some of those just elements and how all these things intersect in life. And it seems so simple when you figure it out, and you wonder why it took you decades to get there. But it takes us decades to get there. And sometimes you don't get there until the exact right moment, as frustrating as that is, when you need to. So, and I think that's kind of the message, and not that there needs to be a main takeaway of the story, but that's one of the main takeaways of the story.
Man.
Okay. All right. So I guess another radical shift to the Marvel world here. Okay. I have to reevaluate how I read comics. Not to bitch, but if you are a DCBS customer, you know that they've had some shipping issues that haven't been resolved. So I'm getting my books mid-month instead of on the early side of the month. And I have to reevaluate what I'm doing, because between Thursday and today, I read 53 DC comics. And they're all in here. And the last thing I want to do is talk about DC Comics. So I have to reevaluate how I do that. I have to keep it fresh for myself.
I'm almost mad you didn't stop at 52.
What? Well, that would have been good, because my 53rd was that awful resolution of that Arkham thing with the 10-eyed man, whatever that's called. I mean, it was so desperate to be. It was desperate to bring our like Arkham villains into Vertigo. I mean, it should have had Vertigo on it. It should have had Vertigo on it. Steve probably would have loved it. So, but one thing I've been doing is I am so far behind on my Marvel reading. Even titles that I collect, I'm like ridiculously behind. So I decided, and this is, if you know me, then you'll know, like, it's part of my craziness. I got very upset with what was going on with Comixology, but one thing that actually returned was that you can go backwards to see what was released on a particular week. So since I am, and it goes all through Comixology's history back to 2008. You can see what was actually released by manipulating. It's like one of the few things on Amazon you can actually manipulate that is the way it was on the old Comixology website. And so, okay, I'm really behind on Marvel. So I decided I'm going to try to catch up and read Marvel as the books were released digitally. Once you get to 2011, there's a lot more day and date, and there's a lot less archive releases. But for that year and a half, they were playing catch up with what was there. So it's kind of nice because they're all kind of bundled. So some of the first releases were Astonishing X-Men, almost the whole series, apart from the giant size X-Men. I know Joss Whedon is a very problematic figure, but there's no denying that wasn't one of the best, if not the best, Kitty Pryde stories ever. And I just love things that they did in an X-Men story, like bringing them back to superheroics, and some of the, just the messed up stuff with when they do introduce Cassandra and the Hellfire Club, and there's a lot of stuff in that run I love. So I read that. I read the first X-23 arc, the first miniseries, because that was released on the first day that Marvel did, and I'd never touched that stuff before. So I only have a basic understanding of Laura's backstory, so that filled in a lot of gaps. But one of the other titles, and I had to switch to my omnibus because I only had the first half, was the first 25 issues of Brubaker's Captain America. What I started reading after this is Civil War, and I was shocked at how badly that is aged. I didn't think that would be. I mean, it's almost in Ultimates territory of stuff that just doesn't fly anymore, and just dialogue that you just groan at. And to me, like when I read Civil War, that was like on the cutting edge as far as Big Two of stuff that could be done. And genuine surprises and genuine changes. I was surprised at how that how badly that aged. This has not aged badly at all. It still feels remarkably fresh. So what you have in here with Ed Brubaker's run, you have most importantly the introduction of the Winter Soldier. Bucky did not die in August 1945. He did survive as an agent of the Russians with all kinds of fucked up shit that they did, and it's provided the basis for a movie, and there's continuing threads that writers are still building upon. Other things that came out of this run. One thing I especially loved is the reintroduction of Sharon Carter, who kind of was like a nothing character before this, and now I think has really earned her place as has a tremendous position in the Captain America lexicon. I'm going to start speeding this up because we each have another book to get to that we're going to have to go through them really quickly, just because of time. But the main takeaway here, and again, this leads from the introduction to the Winter Soldier to the eventual death of Captain America, which does tie into Civil War. So I'm actually tying like one franchise into another in the reading order that I've been ascribed, which is nice. My main takeaway is how fresh. I mean, it feels like, when did this come out? 2003, 2004. So we're, talking, if not 20 years, very close to 20 years. And let me tell you, there were so many moments in here. The sequence in London with Spitfire and Union Jack, and some of the political machinations, and the whole aspect of the Red Skull taking over General Lucan's body. I'm throwing a lot of things at you. I'm not doing very well with plot, but spoilers. You can't factor in when you're talking about 17, 18-year-old material. My main thing is, one of 3, I think.
Yeah.
I have my shelf porn was the DC Archives. That was the one I spent way too much money on. But it still reads very contemporaneously. It's very fresh, and that was my main takeaway from that. And plus, the art by Steve Epting and Mike Perkins, just I mean, I think at this time with particular Marvel, I think the Hitch and the Ultimates were such a huge influence on a lot of other things that were happening at that time, and this notion of widescreen comics. But this filtered out the worst elements of that and celebrated the best. And just from a writing and an art and the graphic standpoint, just a marvelous run. I really enjoyed rereading it and revisiting it.
For me, I think that's probably true of most of Brubaker's writing, though. Brubaker has he has almost a timelessness to his writing. Like it is a very classic feel, and it does not feel dated. Anything that I've gone back and read of his, there's nothing that feels dated. That's why he's another person that usually gets an Eisner nom, but I think deservedly so whenever he gets it every year. He's incredible.
And I think that's why some of what I've read in Civil War was jarring, because it's an evergreen. I'm going from an evergreen with something which kind of feels locked into its own time.
Yeah.
And not for the better. I was very surprised with Civil War. I'll be interested to see as I go through and the major developments of Peter Parker really revealing his identity. Again, not spoilers. This is decades old. What happens with Cap? The role that Iron Man fills as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. after this. I'll be interested to see if there are elements that don't give me that antiquated vibe, but right now it's like it feels like the time that it was written in.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised by that, because I did think that it would age better.
I don't remember if Civil War did this, but Millar's really he's one of those people who use like very contemporary pop culture references in his stuff, that when you go back and read it at a later date, it's like, okay, that was really cutting edge at the time, but now it's like that thing that you're referencing in here, I don't remember it because it happened 20 years ago.
It's interesting because this is just before like elements of social media took off.
Yeah.
And the whole aspect of the incident with the new Warriors in Stamford, Connecticut. And there's people like watching it on the evening news, and there's, they're not tweeting about it, and they're not, and that's really like, that's jarring because because in today's day and age, that's how that not only that news, but also how that outrage would spread. And that's interesting because it does lock it into that time. Whereas this, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timeless.
Yeah. All right. I know we each have another book that we pulled, but we're going to have to do them really quick, like really quick squibs. But I think we have some important books to talk about. So let's get to them. So, Steve, tell us about your second book, please.
Second book, really quick. Radio Spaceman, Spaceman, by Mike Mignola, Greg Hinkle, and Dave Stewart, of course. So Radio Spaceman is a new sort of franchise of the Mignolaverse, or a new offshoot. It supposedly doesn't have anything to do with Hellboy, BPRD, or the Christopher Golden series. But one of the things that Mignola always likes to put in is references to some of his other characters or creatures that permeate some of the other Mignolaverse books. So in this one, it is a strange future, other side of the galaxy, very sort of odd setting that mixes sort of a lot of styles and time periods. But basically, Radio Spaceman is a sort of investigative explorer / enforcer type character that is sent to a planet to investigate a recent crash. While he's there, however, he encounters a few different interesting things happening. And also there is a character that shows up, and I don't really want to spoil it, but let's just say that this character actually, like most of Mignola's books, does have a direct connection to a very recent Hellboy miniseries, which I have talked about within the past year, as one of the villains from that story arc does make an appearance in this completely other universe, other time period. Very interesting. So I love it. If you like Mignola properties, this one's very different. It's much more sci-fi, sort of like steampunky sci-fi, but pretty cool. And also, if you have been reading a lot of the more recent Hellboy, BPRD, and related series, there might be some things in here for you to sort of just tickle your connective tissue and just notice that, hey, there's something in here that I like. But anyway, Radio Spaceman by Dark Horse. Check it out.
Okay, Brian, did you have a second book to talk about, or was
real quick, just
Wolverine?
as a button, I finished Strange Adventures and Rorschach from Tom King, and we've talked about that on the show before. But I do want to go back and do a complete reread now that they're all out. I found the conclusion to Rorschach very satisfying, if not somewhat convoluted, but the Strange Adventures a little less satisfying and certainly a little more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that that's probably the more personal title in some ways for him.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise, I mean, both series are amazing, and I am very glad that they exist in their own spaces. I had just started Human Target, which I know you guys have talked about a little bit, and I'm getting up to speed on. Also, I never finished Batman Catwoman, which I don't.
Oh, there's still one more issue.
Oh, well, there we go. That's why. But I actually hadn't. Sorry, I think my video is stuck again. But long story short, I am getting caught up on all of those series, and so at some point, if we haven't already done a full overview review of them, they're interesting series in their own rights.
Should have a Tom King Palooza.
Yes. Well, just in terms of some other books, Batman Killing Time has just started. So that the first issue with that, and there is some gorgeous David Marquez art in that. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, he makes Commissioner Gordon hot. I mean, I was like, damn, James. Working it.
Well, hello, James.
Hello, James. And Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is over.
Another one I need to check out. Yeah,
that is. I loved that book.
I didn't.
I know.
We're at a differing opinion.
I'm going to read it, and the next time we reconvene, I will definitely have an opinion.
It's good because I don't think from what Caleb and I have discussed, neither of our points are invalid.
No, they're totally
we're just coming from it at a different standpoint, and also why he made me think about things of like why and how I like dislike it more. So I'd be interested to see, because I would say out of the works that we've quoted, I do think that the Supergirl series diverges the most from what we've seen from him, in at least from DC, at least from what we've had from Mr. Miracle onward. So, so over to Caleb. You got a second book there?
I do. My second book is the Google Image Gallery of Ben Percy. It's wonderful. No, so
there's so much to see.
Just it's a very compelling story. So all right. So my second book, you guys know it. I'm a huge Conan fan. I love this character. I love everything about this character. I grew up watching the Conan the Barbarian over and over again. It's my thing. There is obviously Conan at Marvel is doing its own thing. Some really good books there. Go check them out. Also their own level of controversy. But there is a company called Ablaze, which I think I've spoke about before on this show, that puts out their own titles. They can't call them Conan, obviously, because Marvel. But they
are called Conan in Europe.
Yes. Well, they're calling Conan in Europe, and also that he's called Conan inside the story. They just can't put it on the cover. Yeah. So the cool thing about the stories, the conceit is that they are using the original, the original Robert E. Howard books and short stories. So they take the original Howard stuff, they give it to a comics writer to kind of script it into comics, and then give it to a European artist to do. And there has been some phenomenal stuff come out of this, but it is the original Howard story. So for me, this is just like going back and just a breath of fresh air. The latest thing, these are usually 2 issues to 3 issue stories. They also come out in great hardbacks, but it's the Cimmerian Hour of the Dragon. Now, this was the first, and I think the only Robert E. Howard story that was ever published like in novella form. Most of these were short stories in books, weird tales, stuff like that. That they put out wonderful stuff. But Weird Tales. This one actually was published in Weird Tales later, but it originally debuted December of 1935. And so this particular story, Conan is already king of Aquilonia, so he's doing his own thing, being a king. You got these 3 ne'er-do-wells somewhere off who they go back and do something incredibly stupid because they want to take over the world, and they raise a wizard, a long deceased wizard, by giving him back his heart that is going to be immortality. And of course, they're going to make a deal with the wizard because that's smart, and he's going to give them the world, make them rulers of the world, even though that was what he was originally trying to his conquest, what that he wanted. These are not smart men. But the armies converge. There is a battle. Right before that happens, though, the wizard just does some out of body stuff, takes a Doctor Strange walk, and moseys into Conan's tent, scares the living hell out of him. Tells him, "Hey, I'm not going to kill you today, but you're going to lose this battle." Prophecy comes true. That actually happens, and Conan is subjugated, even though he's king of Aquilonia at this point. He finds himself kidnapped and in chains and in a pit at the end of it. And one of the things I love about these stories, other than the gorgeous art, is they reprint the stories in the back of the book, so you actually get to read Robert Howard. But the artist on this particular series is Valentin Setcher, and again, I don't know who this artist is, but they have a painterly style. It reminds me a lot of Stephanie Hans, if you've read Die, the Kieran Gillen book. Not exactly the same, but they're in the same realm. So great for this type of story. Great feel for. I mean, just look at it. I mean, it's just pretty. So go check out these books. It's pure distilled Conan. Love Conan, so I really enjoy these stories. And Ablaze is putting out some. They have not put out a bad one yet, so it's great.
It's cool.
Okay. The book that I want to talk about for my second entry is a very important return, And in January, we saw the return of Saga after a 3-year break. So we have, so far, I have in hand, Steve has them too, issues 55 and 56. Neither of us have 57, though it did hit the stands on Wednesday. And I'm very frustrated that I don't have 57 at this point, because 56 was yet another one of those endings where it was da-da. So let me just briefly tell you where we are. One of the coolest meta things about this is Saga was on a 3-year break. And it gave a chance for Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan to regroup. And in the storyline, it's also 3 years later. I loved that. And where we left off at at issue 54, which is the halfway point, it's a planned 108 issue series. You had the will, and again, this is not spoilers because this is old. Murder 2 very important characters. And it was a hell of a last issue before a break, and we see the ramifications of that, and some of and most importantly, how some threads that weren't joined as closely now are. So one of the things I thought is so cool about the way that Saga is formatted is, I feel like I've known Hazel my whole life, because she is the narrative voice in there, and we're growing up with her effectively. There's things we haven't seen though in the 3 years, and the way that Brian K. Vaughan introduced them, and naturally Fiona Staples, and how that developed. Her sprouting wings and moving onto growing up. I mean, just almost matter of fact, but still majestic. Absolutely loved it. If you see here, there's a character you may have not seen here before. This is what's his name? I keep forgetting it. Bombazine. Sorry about that. So you have additions, and Alana, Hazel's mother, has taken Hazel and Prince Robot, the fourth son. They are in hiding after the war. And if this is unfamiliar terms for you, just read Saga. We also have the will. We have Lion Cat is back, and they're all being introduced sparingly and sensibly. And the structure of this I love. And in the second issue, we move on to a pirate ship, because Alana and Bombazine are dealing drugs to get by, and what seems like one thing at the beginning turns out to be another. But then there's also something that Hazel says about that this was some of the best times of her life, makes me think that whatever transpires in issue 57 it may not be what I'm expecting, but it was jarring. The end of this issue was absolutely jarring, and the expressions and the terrain that covers was just so. It was a punch, and I'm so glad it's back, and I'm so glad we have something that is so fresh. It does not. I have no idea what is ahead for us. No idea, and that's one of the best things about it.
And I love that BKV plays with us with Hazel's narration. I mean, she kind of spoils a lot of what's going to be happening and transpiring, but only in a way that you're like, okay, so she's told us that this is going to be this way, but how? How is that possible? Given this situation, given this action, what happened? It is really funny, and he's been doing that since the beginning. Since issue number 1, where Hazel, is narrating her birth essentially, and just says like, oh yeah, this, so la da 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 da, don't get too attached to these people because my dad's gonna like all of these things come to pass that she talks about. But the journey to get there and how it happens are always a shock, always a surprise.
And even the stuff that she mentions, when it actually does come to fruition, it's still jarring.
Oh yeah.
We knew the fate of certain characters from the first issue. And it's still jarring. And just also the way he the way he aligns stuff. I mean, I'm not sure if you caught this, Steve, but the skull of one character and then Prince Robot's remains are like they're effectively expressed the same way between the two, and yeah. There's just so much beauty in this book, and it's and also I also love this book because there's a lot of expressions of sex, but it's always awkward, it's always so awkward, and it's so well put across. I just love Saga, and I'm so happy it's back. I didn't realize I missed it as much as I do.
Yeah.
So, do you guys, the bottom row here for me? Do you guys read Saga?
I mean, I started it 3-4 years ago, whenever it came out initially, and I don't know where I stopped, but I definitely enjoyed what I read, and it's BKV, and I love his stuff. So yeah, I need to get back to it.
I've read the first 3 or 4 trades because I was reading it in trades, and I'm going to disappoint you, like, as a person. This might be my last episode. You may ban me from the show, but I just I fell out of love. Like, I've lost interest in it completely. Like, and I thought like one of the things was when they took the break, and it was only supposed to be a year-long break. They were like, yeah, we're going to take a year off. I was like, okay, I can go get caught up. Obviously every comic shop in the world has the trades. I'll go grab it, and just never did, and haven't been compelled to pick it back up. And I do like some of the characters. So, like, I think it's Fiona Staples' designs are cool. There are some very compelling moments. I love the queer representation in it. So there's nothing against it. It does not move. Look, very unpopular stance. Very unpopular stance. I recognize that. It just does not move me the way that it moves most comic readers, because this is a beloved comic. So,
just so everybody knows, it is exactly 10 years old. It was first published back in March of 2012. So it's been 10 years of this book since this book started.
It's grown.
They have taken a couple breaks. Yeah, they have taken a couple breaks, but obviously the longest one was this 3-year one.
That's tough, though. I mean, they're surviving when most books that do that don't come back.
Yeah,
Morning Glories.
Yeah,
because of how beloved it is.
You said, really is. It's like you said, Brian, they didn't survive.
They
just stopped.
Yeah.
Like, we've got so much more planned. No, you don't.
But also that it's the same aesthetic, but such a different point in the story. Like, we're coming up, Brian, with Human Target has a substantial break between 6 and 7. Sometimes it benefits. Sometimes the break benefits, especially if it makes the narrative sense. What I did think, though, with the Saga was they were both burned out, and they had to make narrative sense. Because even though you said that it was a break, it was damn close to a monthly schedule. I think their biggest break was 4 months. Within the run prior to this. So, okay, but Saga's back, and really have to get 57 because I'm dying to know what happened. Dying to know what happened. All right, we're going to wrap this episode up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, when you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him, and we do something very similar here, where we signify something which may be a comic book, but it may also be a TV program or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
So we had a similar, similar idea. So I'm going to go with my second idea, which was I finally saw a documentary that came out originally in 2019, but I just saw it this week, so it was new to me, and made me super happy and gave me all the good feels. And that is Never Surrender, which is the documentary about Galaxy Quest. I remember watching Galaxy Quest in the theaters when it first came out back in, I think it was 99. Got it when it was on video, just loved it, watched it to death, thought it was just a really fun, brilliant movie. Interestingly enough, it has, of course, become a cult classic for a lot of people, but it didn't start out that way. I didn't realize how unpopular it was when because I had the fan blinders on. But this documentary was just so much fun. It showed how much love went into making the movie, how many interesting things happened behind the scenes before it even got made. And of course, the legacy that it's built over the past 20 years. 20 plus years of being sort of a beloved sci-fi, goofy classic, Star Trek homage. So I recommend watching Never Surrender and then giving Galaxy Quest a rewatch and see if you enjoy it any more after watching the documentary about
it. Bill, you're muted, I think.
Steve, I think that might be an overblown element, because I'm just looking at the box office for this when it was released, and it is respectable.
Yeah, it wasn't a flop. It was not a flop, but critically, it wasn't really well loved, and the idea was that it would just be kind of like a blip, in a very busy year. And they talked about that. That's the year The Matrix came out. That's the year all these other movies came out that hit huge. And then here's Galaxy Quest, and did respectably, but they were just sort of like, it'll be done, and nobody will ever talk about it again. But it became a pretty big cult.
Because I'm saying, for a 1999 film, if you factor in inflation, you're looking about a $300 million gross worldwide. That doesn't sound like a bomb to me. So.
No, they never said at any point that it was a bomb or a flop. It just wasn't. It didn't really hit the heights that they thought it would be. But since then, it's gotten quite a following.
Okay, over to Brian. Brian, what is your wolf of the week?
Joe versus Carol. Listen, I know you've all seen Tiger King on Netflix. I get it. But let me just tell you, the performances in this documentary, or this miniseries, by specifically Kate McKinnon as Carol Baskin, John Cameron Mitchell as Joe Exotic, and Kyle MacLachlan, oh my God, as Howard fucking Baskin. This miniseries, it's a retread if you've seen the documentary, but it is a really well told story, and it's way more balanced, I think, between the two, at least giving us more glimpses into their pasts and how they got there in a fictionalized narrative sort of way, but in a very successful way, I think, to show why they were who they were at that time when they interacted, and then the drama that unfolds. But let me just tell you, Kyle MacLachlan. I love Kyle MacLachlan, obviously. Big fan of the Dune movie that he did. Big fan of Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet and all of the things that Kyle MacLachlan, How I Met Your Mother, he picks weird roles in a delightful way. And his Howard Baskin is such a gem. You just got to see it to believe it. Have any of you watched the Joe versus Carol yet? It's on Peacock, which I know isn't the most common streaming service.
True, and it may show up on certain person's Plex server currently, but
we won't indict you for that right now. But
I'm not saying it's mine.
Other people's, whoever's there, not you. But yeah, have you seen? Did you watch it though?
I haven't yet. Jason started it though, and he's.
I haven't even watched the second Tiger King material that came onto Netflix.
I didn't watch the first.
Yeah.
Oh, you're better off. Just Caleb, watch this.
It was like one of those things though. It was like Tiger King was one of those things. Like I got through the first episode and like, this is so. I feel like horrible about being a member of humanity, but I have to know what happens after this.
Roger,
I think a lot of people were in that boat.
Yeah. Roger watched it. I have ignored it on purpose, but I don't need to, because literally everyone was talking about it, so I know exactly what happened. So I'm not. I can't the little veins in my temple will pop out.
I just want you to appreciate though the queerness of Joe Exotic. As much as he is a horrible person, this miniseries goes into his past in a way that they didn't do as successfully, to appreciate some of his journey, so to speak, and his relationships, for better or for worse. And I mean that intentionally. But John fucking Hedwig and the Angry Inch, John Cameron Mitchell, is inspired as Joe Exotic. If you're a fan of Hedwig, you got to see it just for that. But also Kyle MacLachlan, because let me tell you, Kate McKinnon's Kate McKinnon. She's whatever. Yeah, she's fine. But Kyle and John Cameron Mitchell, I just can't say enough. And the rest of the ensemble's great. Little things here and there. Just watch that first episode, and you may have PTSD again from the Tiger King documentary or what you've heard, but like it's great. It's really good.
Okay, Brian, we have to ask you a question about something that we were talking about before you entered into the fray tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you taught on a collegiate level for a while, and we were wondering what your educational background is. Do you have postgraduate? Do you have a postgraduate degree?
I have a master's.
Okay.
So I was an adjunct as. Wait, what?
No, we were talking about we all have postgraduate education.
Yeah, I mean, I have a master's, but I spent a lot of time in it was in a PhD program basically, and it ended up like shunting me into the corporate or I should say corporate, the military industrial complex. But every now and again, I work with a lot of PhD folks, and I every now and again I get tempted and lured back into the academic world. But I think I honestly made the better choice for my field at least. Yeah.
Okay. Just wondering. We started talking about our education background for some reason.
Joe versus Carol. Watch it.
All right. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
All right. My wolf of the week goes out to Joe Percy's biceps and his triceps and his thighs and his calves and his stomach and his pecs and everything. Because God bless that man is pretty. Okay. So no, in all seriousness, we talked about this at the beginning of the show.
Aren't you worried like he would hit you though?
I hope so. Wait, that's a different story. In all seriousness, we spoke about this a little bit at the beginning of the show. I did some traveling this week, and I went to Texas, and I got to go to some really cool places, some important places, museums, the Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, but also I went to AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play, which is for me, I'm a Cowboys fan if you can't tell. So I got to see a bunch of history there. But while I was there, I did what I'm supposed to do as a good nerd, and I hit up some local comic shops. And there were two of them that I got to go to. One of them is Red Pegasus, which is down in the Bishop Arch district of Dallas is what it's called. Very cool little shop, very queer friendly, loved it. And then the other one is Zeus Comics, which is an Eisner winning comic shop. Again, really cool queer comics section. So in the middle of it, obviously Arkansas being blood red, Texas not far off from it. Really cool little queer comic shops, queer friendly comic shops, if not just explicitly queer comic shops. I absolutely had a blast. It was great talking to the proprietors there, the people who worked there, and picked up some really cool stuff. Grabbed Flintstones hardcover. That's going on my shelf. It's awesome. I'm a huge Ditko fan. So I grabbed a book called Ditko Shrugged that I want to read and juxtapose it to our friend Zach's book. More recently, this came out from our friend Cena Grace. I grabbed Rockstar and Soft Boy. Haven't read it yet, but can't wait to see that. And hopefully maybe we can talk to Cena about it sometime. That'd be awesome. Sentient from Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Walta. And then this just to make everybody happy. Hardcovers of Wubbable Oaf, and the other Wubbable Oaf. So I now have both Wubbable Oafs in hardcover. So support local comic shops when you can. Thank you to Red Pegasus and to Zeus Comics for entertaining me for a little bit. It was a blast. If you're ever in Dallas, go check out both of them. And those are my wolves of the week. And Ben Percy, because mercy.
Okay. As Steve alluded to, my wolf of the week was something that he initially planned on, but it's a show we have commiserated about. And the show I'm talking about is Minx, which began streaming on HBO Max. First two episodes were on March 17th. It's continuing in, I think, a fairly cool, I don't want to say tradition, but in the last few years, we've had some really good representation of the 70s, in shows like The Deuce and Mrs. America, and even something like what was the comedian show, Steve? 2 seasons.
You were just yeah, I knew you would ask me. Yes, that was such a great
here.
one.
I'm standing up here, or
I'm standing here.
Here.
Yeah,
it's a show about the comedians, and effectively Mitzi Shore's Club. But you've had these, excellent embodiments of the 70s. And what we have in Minx is there is a young woman named Joyce, and she wants to put out a magazine called The Matriarchy Awakens. And she goes to like a convention where people are able to. I'm dying up here. Thank you, Steve. I was dying with that, thinking of it. I'm standing up here. Okay. So in Minx, we have this young woman, Joyce, who wants to have this magazine with a feminist slant, to say the least, as a publication. So she's searching for a publisher. And while she's at this convention, she meets Doug. Doug happens to be the owner of a publishing company that specializes in porn. And somehow these two align. We're talking about a time where just pre-Playgirl, where Burt Reynolds did a centerfold for Cosmopolitan. And with that, it seems the doors are open for a woman's magazine that would entertain full frontal nudity for men. And we go through the process of them conceiving this magazine. Excellent cast. I'm not as enthralled with the lead. I'm just trying to get her name here. Ophelia something. Ophelia Lovabond, which I know sounds like a Downton Abbey character. But she's surrounded by some excellent actors, and also, I don't want to say surprisingly, we have a queer representation among the staffers of the magazine, which was nice to see. I think they were releasing 2 episodes a night every Thursday.
Yep. Yeah,
so we could have been watching that instead of being with you, but that's okay, with the way streaming and everything else operates. But that is my Wolf of the Week, Minx on HBO Max. And if I didn't say it, Jake Johnson plays Doug, and he is excellent in it.
Bill, I'm so glad you talked about this.
Yeah.
This is a great show. We just watched it last night. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
It's so good. It's so good. I actually like Ophelia Lovabond in this role. I think
she might grow on me. I just think that the supporting cast is so strong that she almost feels like a bias, like Black Panther.
She held her own.
Feels like a Black
her
Panther
sister.
Yeah,
her sister
is awesome. And Bambi, the woman who plays Bambi at the magazine.
I forgot who she is, but she was in the Righteous Gemstones season 2 as the like pastor's wife of the Texas ministry.
Yeah,
amazing. I love her.
Yeah.
When that lead holds her own against Steve Tobolowsky, though, in that second episode where he's the guy who runs the club, the tennis club or whatever. Yeah. You can hold your own against Stephen Tobolowsky. You're doing okay.
Yeah, and just so many great one-liners. Oh my God, so many great one-liners in it.
Lots of peen.
Lots of peen.
God. So
and
much.
very different sized peen.
So much peen.
Which
all the types
all kinds of peen. All kinds of peen. And they comment on the all kinds of peen, and that's some of the funniest lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just looking at Caleb, and I'm just thinking, like, he's just looking past us, and it's just all Ben Percy.
I was just thinking Ben Percy Peen.
Can that be the title of the episode?
I haven't
we got a lot of contenders there,
Yeah, there's a lot of good.
Started off with Ponzi. I mean, we got.
No, I haven't seen the show that I haven't seen the show that you're talking about yet. So I have no reference for these things, but it's on my list because the way you were talking about it.
Yeah,
it's great. It's a lot of fun.
It's really been a lot of fun.
It's fun. It's also respectful. Like it is such a respectful show. It's not about this topic.
It covers a salacious. It covers a salacious topic without ever approaching that kind of vibe. Yeah,
even with all the peen.
Even with all the peen and the various sized peen.
Yes.
Peen of many sizes.
It's like a cornucopia.
The peen of... It's like the coat of many colors. The peen of many sizes.
The wide variety of peen. Okay, no more peen. Wrap up. Again, thank you for joining us. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, please download us through Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio and many, many of the other podcatching platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pitter.
I'm Steve Morey. Oh,
And I'm
look at that. Look at that. Totally. He got the totem pole right and you got it wrong. Let's do it again. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pitter.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.